Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, Top 5 Tips for Successful BIM Implementation. We welcome all attendees, and I hope everyone is doing well and keeping safe. This is Anne-Marie Pizzatelli, and I'm the Global Head of Marketing for the Built Environment at BSI. Today's topic is of great interest as we discuss Building Information Modeling, or BIM, a tool for the achievement of increased synergy and collaboration that allows companies to become more resilient, productive, and efficient. During this webinar, we will discuss BIM, provide 5 great tips for implementation, and we have a great pair of subject matter experts to join us and share their experience and knowledge. I would now like to introduce today's speakers. Our first speaker is Emilia Cardamone, a Program Manager Digital Construction at BSI, and our second speaker is Gary Pattinson, Certification Technical Expert, Digital Construction at BSI. Welcome, Emilia and Gary. Great. Welcome. Our first poll, and I'll ask Jalna to please launch the poll. Who is attending today? If you could launch the poll, Jalna. Who is attending today? Are you an engineer? Are you a project manager, a contractor, a supply chain manager, or subcontractor or owner? Has the poll been launched? Let's see if we can launch the poll. Okay, great. The poll is in progress and we're just collecting responses. Great. I'll just give everybody a few more seconds to vote in our poll, and that way we can get a good range of who's attending today. I will close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. That's great. And can we see the poll results now? Great. So it looks like we have 68% are engineers or designers, 9% project managers, 8% contractors, 9% supply chain or subcontractors, and 5% owners. Wow, a great range of people attending today our webinar. Very interesting. Thank you for voting in our poll, and we now know who's attending today. And now we'll go to our second poll. And if we could launch our second poll, and ask Jalna to do that, please. Where are you in your BIM journey? And this is a single answer. Just getting started, looking for information. Maybe you're testing BIM processes in your organization. Perhaps you're using BIM as the best practice in projects, but not certified. Or you may be certified to ISO 19650 BIM. And we'll talk a little bit more about ISO 19650 today. So where are you in your BIM journey? We'll just let the audience have a few more seconds so that they can vote in the poll. Are you just getting started? Are you testing BIM? Are you using it as a best practice but not certified, or actually indeed certified to ISO 19650? I'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now let's close the poll and let's look at our results. And here are our results. 35% are just getting started, looking for information. 28% are testing BIM processes in the organization. 28% are using BIM as a best practice in projects, but not certified, and 9% are indeed certified to ISO 19650. Gary and Emilia, any surprises or comments about our second poll results?
Gary here. No, that looks like a good spread. I think the subject content we're going to discuss today should hopefully have something for everyone, for all the newcomers as well as those a bit more well versed in the processes of BIM. So that's good to see.
Great. Thank you, Gary, and thank you everyone for taking part in our polls. I will now turn it over to Emilia and Gary.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. Can you go to the next slide, please? Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Emilia Cardamone. I'm the program manager for digital construction within BSI. So let's get started about what is BIM, why are we talking about BIM, and how does building information modeling work for you? Next slide. Before getting started, I'd like to begin this presentation with a quote from a very popular architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, who said, "You can use an eraser on a drafting table or a sledgehammer on the construction stage." Well, you know, that really, really resonates with what BIM is and why are we doing BIM. And although Frank Lloyd Wright was a popular architect of the 20th century, you know, nowadays this sentence is more true than ever. Next slide, please. And why that sentence is true? Well, not long ago, it wasn't uncommon for a new building to be drawn 2.5 times and the construction time to take longer than expected. So BIM is a solution and something that helps you define a set of processes for the definition, the production, the management, and the exchange of information through the whole asset lifecycle. Now, one very important thing is that you always need to keep in mind that you need to start with the end of your project in mind. And BIM helps support you a focused production of information, a trust on information, increase access to information, and stress out the importance of collaboration within the construction industry. But ultimately, it helps you reduce waste, reduce time, and save money. Next slide, please. But what is building information and modeling? Building information modeling is all about information delivery requirements, such as what level of details must the information have, or in what format must the information be developed, how should the information be classified, and together with that, also a set of information management requirements, like how should the information be coordinated, how is your delivery team selected, who should approve those information. So it's all about information management, and that's something that is really important to take into account and to keep in mind. Now, this list is a non-exhaustive list. Of course, there's plenty of other things, but just to give you a snapshot of what BIM is and what kind of questions BIM answer to. Next question. Next slide, please. So how BIM works for you and to whom BIM is applicable. The adoption of BIM is applicable to those involved in the specification of a project and of an appointment, such as clients, for example, to the management of production of information, the procurement, design, construction, and management and commission of the information and the built asset, delivering the asset management, the commissioning of asset, and so on. There you can see a screenshot taken from the standard where you can see how it works. And some of the roles, of course, that list you can see in this slide is not a complete list, but then you can see some of the role that BIM is applicable to. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to standards, the relevant standard for building information management is the ISO 19650 framework that includes concept and principle, design and construction, asset management, information exchange, security, and also health and safety. Now, this standard is not something to be considered on its own. It can be part of your wide asset and project management system, but also part and complementary to the your 9001 or your quality and organizational management standard. And this is really important to take into account. Next slide, please. Thank you. I'll now hand over to Gary.
Thanks, Amelia. Hi there, everyone. My name is Gary Patterson, based in the UK, but my role is I work closely with Amelia, and my role is the global manager for BSI's BIM certification schemes. So I think what's important to talk about now is in order for us to really utilize the benefit of the BIM process, it's important that we define key functions, and the ISO 19650 standards defines these key functions and how these functions interact. Now these functions are defined in a way that allows flexibility of application. So depending on the nature and complexity of your project or your asset. So we have at the heart of the project, we have what's called the appointing party. Now this is the project client, which is the person organisation responsible for initiating the project and approving the brief. But in more general terms, it's the receiver information concerning works, goods or services from what's called the lead appointed party. Now in some countries, the appointing party can be termed client, owner, employer, but it's important to understand that the appointing party is not limited just to these functions. So next we have the what's called the appointing party. The appointed party. So this is a provider of information concerning works, goods or services. Now the lead appointed party, this is the person or the organisation interacting directly with the appointing party or the client, and a lead appointed party should be identified for each delivery team. So what's the delivery team? I hear everyone asking. So this is the lead appointed party and their appointed parties. So it's basically the tier one organisation and their supply chain. Now the delivery team can be made up of any size, from one person carrying out all the necessary functions through to a complex multi-layered task teams. The size and structure of each delivery team will be in response to the scale and complexity of the project under question, and you see that as a common theme for the BIM standards, is that there's a strong emphasis on ensuring that you can apply BIM proportionally. Multiple delivery teams can be appointed by simultaneously or sequentially by the lead appointed party. And finally, we have the task teams. So these are the individuals responsible for performing a specific task. If we can move to the next slide, please. Excellent. So now that we've defined some of the key functions of BIM and their relationships, what we can see is when going through the standards themselves, the clauses within the standards are assigned against these different functions. So in this way, we have a subset of requirements for each of the given functions. Now, ISO 19650 allows for flexibility for the appointing party to delegate information management functions to other persons or organizations within the project team. And then, so in doing so, it's important they consider the prospective lead appointed party or third party's responsibility, the authority that the appointing party will delegate, the competency of the individuals undertaking that function will need. Now, where the appointing parties appoints a prospective lead appointed party or a third party, it's important to really clearly define the management functions, and they can do that through the use of a information management assignment matrix, such as the one in Annex A of ISO 19650-2. And within this matrix, you're clearly defining every clause against a given function, so that across the project team, there's no ambiguity and there's complete clarity about who's doing what within the project. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in order for BIM to be successful, it needs to be applicable to all types and scales of projects and assets. This is achieved largely by the structure of the clauses within the ISO 19650 framework of standards and the way in which they define their requirements. So hopefully be aware of the kind of should versus shall statements used in standards. So the shoulds are the advisory best practice requirements, and the shalls are the actual mandatory requirements. Now, the way in which the clauses are structured within ISO 19650 is you'll have a shall statement, so requesting the organisation to carry an activity, but then within the same clause and within the second paragraph of that clause, there'll be a shall consider statement. So this is where an organisation can meet the main requirement of this clause by applying different aspects. And we can see here an example of one of those. It's got two-part statements, and you see this is a common approach in all of the clauses within the 19650 standards. The next slide, please. So top tip for number one is understand the real and practical benefits that BIM can bring your business and make BIM business as usual, not just an extra. And the reason why we put this particular tip is that we sometimes see BIM treated as an extra, something that an additional chargeable service that you may provide to your clients. But BIM shouldn't be seen in this way. You should see the real benefits in adopting BIM and want to adopt BIM whether or not you're asked for it, because you as an organization see the benefit in its application. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pass back to Amelia for the next slides.
Thank you very much, Gary. Now we're going to talk about what's digital transformation in the construction industry, what we can see are the trends, let's say, in the world. Next slide, please. Now, first of all, let's talk about where are we within the BIM journey and within the maturity of BIM. We used to reference to BIM level 2 back in the good old days, but at the moment we are more moving towards a stage 2 ISO 19650 framework denomination of what we are doing at the moment. And as you can see, we are not there yet in terms of being fully matured in the market, but we are at a really good stage, and that there has been loads of improvements if we refer to this tab that you can find in ISO 19650-1. Next slide, please. Now, where are we with the BIM adoption in the world? We've done a research, and there you can see some links of where we found the data from. And we have seen that actually Europe is pretty much advanced in adopting BIM as business as usual. Some countries are more mature than others, but then of course in APAC as well, we see Russia, India, and China being at the forefront in the BIM adoption, as well as in America, for example, the USA, Canada, and Brazil are starting to adopt BIM, and we see a rapid increase in adopting building information modeling as business as usual. Next slide, please. And now, why some of the countries are more advanced than the others? Just to give you an example, in the UK, from 2016, organizations tendering for public sectors or local authority contracts, they must demonstrate that they are working in compliance with PAS 1192-2 or equivalent, which means now ISO 19650-2. So really, there was a big push here in the UK from the government to the organization to start adopting, to use the standards and the best practices out there in order to be able to bid for a public tender. Next slide, please. But what has happened in the UK has actually happened in a different way, let's say, in other countries and in other areas of the world. For example, in the UAE, BIM starting from 2015 was suggested to be used on public sector projects above height or area thresholds. In Hong Kong as well, they've adopted this threshold model, but it was more related to value. Similar thing is happening in Italy, starting from 2019 to 2025. There's a phased approach based on the threshold value, again in the public sector. Germany as well, within infrastructure projects, and so on. Like, we see these government mandates being like pushed from many governments around the globe. We know that in the USA they are discussing these, also in LATAM. So as you can see, that there is a good push from governments when it comes to BIM mandates, and that really helps the adoption of BIM within the construction industry. Next slide, please. What we have seen personally within BSI, considering our clients, is that BIM is largely adopted by lead-appointed parties, so Tier 1 clients, specifically lead contractors. but also appointing party like clients, because BIM is seen as something that can push the tier one companies and they understood what's behind. Lately, we've actually seen a much wider adoption of BIM across the full supply chain of the projects, like architects, specialists, subcontractors, and also the asset management sector is moving towards the BIM adoption. So, from a client point of view, there has been more examples seen of clients driven BIM requirements, but also example of tier one driving BIM requirements from a client perspective, but also drilling it down through the supply chain. Next slide, please. So tip number 2, don't wait to be asked to deliver BIM and start using BIM process yourself. Lead by example. Let's face it, if we all wait that everyone is 100% ready before any changes are made in the construction industry when it comes to building information management, we'll never get to the third level that we were discussing before, and to the perfection of building information modeling. So every one of us should play his own parts and lead by example and start adopting BIM. Next slide, please. I'll now hand over back to Gary. Thank you.
Thanks, Emmy. Yes, so I just want to talk about how collaboration, communication, and engagement all play a part in BIM. So if you just move to the next slide, please.
Hi, I think we have a poll. So,
oh, great.
Yeah, if that's okay with you, Gary, we'll do this next poll, and that's a really interesting one. And so the poll is, why is BIM important to you and your organization? Multiple choice, multiple answer. This means that you can pick more than one answer. For the alignment of all stakeholders on a project, improved information sharing and collaboration across the project using the common data environment, saving time and money, aligning with industry best practices, achievement of certification for recognition, and of course, sales growth as well. So we've got some answers for you here. Why is BIM important to you and your organization? Alignment of stakeholders in a project, improve information sharing across the project using the CDE, saving time and money, alignment with the best practices in the industry, achievement of certification for recognition. So great question here. We see a lot of voting going on right now. So I'll leave a few seconds so that our audience can now vote in this poll. And I will close this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let's close the poll now and see what the results are. And the results are, why is BIM important to you and your organization? 48% say alignment of all stakeholders in a project. 72% say improvement of information sharing across the project using the CDE. 55% say saving time and money. 83% aligning with industry best practices. That's great to see. And 28% achievement of certification for recognition. Any surprises or insight from you, Gary, on the results of our poll? And Amelia?
No, other than I'm glad to see all the answers are represented, because I personally feel that the adoption of BIM is important for all of those reasons. So it's good that they're all represented here.
Great. Thank you. We'll close the poll now, and we'll go to the next slide.
Excellent. Thanks, Anne-Marie. Great. Okay, so we've talked about how BIM defines a set of procedures for information management, or set of processes. So this is all very, very good. There's more to BIM than just blindly following these processes, and to bring about positive change in the way you deliver your work. So some of the challenges facing your project teams relate to collaboration and communication. Some of these problems include or challenges include the size of your respective organization and delivery teams, the differences within your workforce in terms of skill and knowledge, the appetite or inertia towards in attitude towards change, market requirements and pressures. Obviously, we have COVID and remote working, and also the experience of delivering BIM. And then from those challenges, some of the unwanted results that come from that are miscommunication of requirements or instructions, loss of information, duplication of efforts, unassigned tasks and unaccountability, contradictory conventions adopted, and general silo-based working. And all of these have an effect to decrease efficiency and productivity, and of course that affects the bottom line and efficiency in terms of profits. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So this inertia in delivery practice can be seen across all the functions that we've defined. So for example, challenges within your own organization, challenges in supporting your clients, in helping them define realistic and clearly defined BIM specifications. So you may not have had experiences where BIM has been specified within a project, but that specification is either incomplete or incorrectly defined or clarified, should I say. And then, of course, support with your supply chain. So ensuring that all of your organizations within your supply chain rise with the tide in enabling BIM projects. So next few slides, I just wanted to talk about the challenges facing each of these three groups of stakeholders. So go to the next slide, please. So firstly, within your own organization, so challenges of adoption you may see in applying BIM. So the first we find is the need to have this internal BIM champion, someone or a group of people within your organization that really get it and understand what benefits that you as an organization can achieve in adopting BIM. Second, we see is that knowledge needs to be passed to a senior executive level, so you get senior sponsorship and understanding of what the organization can how the organization can benefit. Then we have the adoption of BIM, so adopting BIM processes into your organization, updating any IT or software requirements you may have, changing the working culture. Obviously, that's a big thing. Moving on to staff training, so this may require a shift in the way you deliver work. And then lastly, which is maybe the hardest bit, is turning that theory into practice. So how you can make BIM really work practically with your organization. Once you've done that, you've then got this is within your own organization. You then, of course, got your clients and your supply chain to worry about. So we move to the next slide, please. So what are the challenges facing the adoption of BIM within your delivery team? So these are all the task teams and the appointed parties that you may be involved in. So firstly, each of those organizations are going to have all of the above challenges in red within their own organization. But from your perspective, working with the supply chains, typically these organizations will have less resourced or dedicated resources than you might have. They may be supporting their own supply chain. They may have challenges in understanding the BIM requirements, and of course they may have challenges in delivering against those BIM requirements. Go to the next slide, please. And lastly, we have the challenges for the client or the appointing parties. So firstly, the role of the client or the appointing party is not a passive role. There's key responsibilities that need to be managed or delegated when applying BIM. So again, all the internal challenges relate to your clients, so your appointing parties. Crucially though, the clients, as they're going to be at the heart of the project, they really need to understand the value in specifying BIM correctly. So how can they benefit, particularly commercially, from applying BIM? They need to have a technical understanding, or at least have the means of appointing a third party to support in that technical understanding. They need to be able to specify BIM in a meaningful way, and of course need to level up their supply chain as well. So what we see here is we have a whole host of challenges that the industry or the sector needs to address, and the standards is a really good way of providing that common understanding and framework in addressing some of these problems or challenges, should I say. Next slide, please. So our top tip number 3 is, so be prepared to support your clients and your supply chain to get the best out of BIM. So you need to understand that organizations are effectively just collections of individuals moving at different speeds. And from a BIM perspective, you're only as strong as your weakest link. So it benefits the whole supply chain and the whole project if we see collaboration both internally within your own organization, but also across your supply chain and supporting your clients. Thanks. Next slide, please. So the next thing I want to talk about is the common data environment, or the CDE. So I suspect a lot of you would have heard of this already. Some of you may be already implementing this. But one of the reasons why I want to just stress the CDE, because this is one of the kind of foundational processes and workflows that are at the heart of a BIM project. Next slide, please. So you'll recognise this slide before the of the different functions within the organisation. So when you have an extensive supply chain, and bear in mind this could be could apply to a small project as well as a large project with an extensive supply chain with multiple delivery teams, multiple lead-appointed parties, complex task teams, all producing information and managing information. So we have a real risk here when you're producing this quantity of information, of the loss of information, unknown information, unsearchable information, so not being able to be found, the duplication of information and effort, how the unclear usage of the information, so the purpose to which the information was made, unknown ownership of the information, lack of security in the information, useless or overproduction of information, and out-of-date information. Now, these are just some of the challenges or the potential problems of producing the types of quantity of information that you guys will be producing on a given project. Move to the next slide, please. So ISO 19650 addresses this by defining a workflow. They call it the common data environment, or the CDE. So the CDE establishes a methodology for managing the production, distribution, and quality of information collected and generated and used throughout the asset lifecycle. So important features to think about the CDE is the CDE is a workflow. It's applicable to both the project delivery stage and the asset management phase, so the whole life cycle of the asset. Its principles are defined within 19650-1, and then the specific requirements that relate to both the design and asset management phase, design, construction, and asset management phase are defined within ISO 19650-2 and -3, respectively. And the CDE solution, so it can be both a database management, capability of managing files or information containers, but it's also used to manage workflows, approvals, notifications, and the kind of underlying principle of the CDE is getting the right information to the right people at the right time. So it ensures that information within the CDE, so there's clarity of use, the quality of information, the availability of information, the retrievability, the searchability, the security, and ultimately the trust of the information within the CDE. Okay, it's important to understand that the CDE is where we store the information model, and this isn't necessarily held in one place, particularly for large projects and assets or widely dispersed teams. So the CDE can be distributed across different systems across different platforms and different softwares. But the thing that glues it all together is that these systems are managing the information and workflows in a coordinated and coordinated way, where all the users and organizations using the information are using a common set of management processes. Okay, go next slide, please. So you may be aware of all of some of these states. So here, just to give a kind of a slight dip our toes into some of the workflows that define the CDE. So every information container or every file basically within your CDE will be in one of 4 states. And these are conceptual states where we have the WIP area or the WIP state. This is where organizations have access to information at a task team level. So this is where unapproved information is retained. We have the shared state. This is where information resides that is used for is accessible by other organizations within the delivery team. We have the published state, which is where information has been formally approved by the client or the client representative, well, that's the appointing party. And then we have the archive state, which provides an audit trail and log of all the previous versions and iterations of files that are developed within the CDE. Now, each information container within the CDE will have a unique ID, so that will be based on agreed and documented convention. Each will have a status or suitability code, so it'll be managed using what's called metadata, and there'll be controlled access and security at a information container level across the whole CDE. Next slide, please. And here, I'm not going to go through all of this slide. I thought maybe perhaps you'd want to take a screenshot or something of it. But this kind of gives a bit more detail into the workflow process of the CDE itself, the differences between the 4 states, the WIP, shared, published, and archive, and some of the reviews and authorization checks that are carried out between each of these states. Now, it's important to understand that this is a conceptual diagram, and this defines a common set of processes that are assigned to each of these states. Next slide, please. Excellent. And for our last slide, I just want to talk about BIM software. So the CDE is a process. Now, of course, there are many CDE softwares that exist out there. The way we treat software is that BIM is about information management processes. We see software as the tool to enable or support those BIM processes. Now, there are key processes within the BIM ISO 19650 framework of standards that directly link to software functions. So, for example, common data environments that we've just discussed, model authoring, clash detection and model coordination, design and construction management, asset and facilities management, and health and safety management. So these are all processes that are directly affected by the use of softwares. But then, of course, we have lots of other software functions that exist that don't have a direct link to the ISO 19650 standards. However, they are enabled by BIM. So BIM sets the foundation, and then these additional functions are an add-on that you can start to use. So, for example, 4D management. So that's of course time management, 5D or cost management, enhanced visualization softwares, environmental modeling, and there's a whole host of other types of softwares that exist that support BIM processes. But the key point here is that BIM is about process, and the software is the tool to help organizations enable those processes. Thanks. If we go to the next slide, please. And for my final tip, treat software as a tool to support your business. So as I've just hopefully stressed, software is important, but it's just a tool. To maximize your BIM results, software needs to be chosen that supports your way of working and your BIM processes, and not the other way around. So don't let the software lead you, find the software that enables your BIM delivery. Thanks. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass back to Amelia to discuss the relationship between standards and technology.
Thank you. Something happened.
Can you
Okay,
see the
good.
screen now? Okay, great.
Yeah, I can see the screen. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Can you go to the next slide, please?
I think we have a poll. So
Okay, sorry.
great. And so if we could launch our next poll, and this is a great question for you again. What is your knowledge of the ISO 19650 BIM standards? We just talked about a bit about the ISO 19650 BIM standard. Single answer here, I am not familiar with the standards. I am aware of ISO 19650, but have not read them. I have read the ISO BIM standards. Maybe you've downloaded them and read them, and then, or we are utilizing BIM standards in our operations. So let's let the audience take a few seconds to vote and understand the audience's knowledge of the ISO 19650 standards. So we see the audience voting. Some interesting results coming in. So we'll give the audience just a few more seconds and then we'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We will close the poll now and look at the results. And it looks like 20% are not familiar with the standards. Glad you came today to learn more about the standards. 30% are aware of the ISO standards, but have not read them. 32% have read them, very interesting, and 19% are utilizing the BIM standards in their operations. Very interesting results. Amelia, any surprises for you?
No, it's not something that really surprised me. As you can see, there's basically a split. There's a 50% that is not really on top of reading the standard or being familiar with the standard, and a 50% that he has read it and wants to read it or is already utilizing BIM standards, so that they are already in the BIM journey, let's say, by using best practices. Yeah, no, it's not surprising, but hopefully with these 50% that is not really familiar with ISO 19650, they've got kind of a good feeling about ISO 19650, and we've given them enough information today.
Great, thank you. I will now close the poll and hand it back to Amelia.
Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, good. So what are the standards out there? Within the UK, and BSI has been kind of one of the main actors in building the best practices. BSI has developed, together with the government and some other organization within the construction industry, a set of standards that is called PAS. Maybe some of you might have PAS 1192, -2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So these standards were created by BSI, and they were actually free to download from a website that the government and BSI had created in order to enable the industry to be on top of BIM procedures, and we've seen these being really successful. And actually, it wasn't only in the UK that countries were, adopting a best practice, but we've seen these standards being adopted outside as well. But what has happened starting from 2018-19, there has been some ISO committees that have looked into those standards and have created a framework of international standards, the BIM framework of standards. They are now international, and we've seen the large adoption of these standards all across the world. So whether you are in the design and construction stage, or in the asset management stage, or or you want to look at the security of BIM or health and safety, there are standards out there that can help you build your procedures and information management within building information management. Next slide, please. Okay, so benefits that can be achieved through the adoption of BIM standards and having a standard-based approach within your organization is to have a common and a consistent understanding of BIM, clear requirements to your delivery team, full BIM engagement from your delivery team. I know Gary was talking about it before. BIM implemented across the entire life cycle, so don't forget that we can apply BIM from brief to the commission of a building, really. Standardized approach adopted to delivery, so that will help clarify any doubts within the supply chain and within the different organizations that are collaborating on a project. But ultimately also help maximize the benefits of BIM adoption and reduce cost, waste, and save money, as we were saying before. Next slide, please. Can you hear me?
Amelia, we're having a bit of technical difficulty, I think, with.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes. So as I was saying, we've seen the large adoption of the standards, and of course, we have also certified many companies all across the world, and we've seen best practices shared all over the places. And as you can see there, we have clients in 25 different countries. We have around 123, 125 clients that owns the Kitemark certification. But overall, we have more than 360 BIM clients everywhere in the world, as you can see there. And you might recognize some of the big players within the construction industry. So this is not just a UK story, let's say, but it is a global story, and it is important that every one of us play a vital role in embracing BIM and help spread the best practices within the project delivery. Next slide, please. So tip number 5, Sons has already done the hard work for you in writing the BIM standards. So all you need to do is to use them. Now, it is important to understand that these standards comes from a general consensus of the industry. So the ISO committees themselves were formed by people coming from the industry. So it's not just people like us, BSI, saying what to do, basically, but it's actually people that were coming from main contractors, architects, that they're all being, or people, literally people like you, that have been in a committee and they've put together these best practice based on their own experience and the common consensus and generated those ISO standards. So these guidance is there. Please use them. Now, how can BSI work with you and your organization supporting your digital transformation? We are a global brand, so we have presence all across the globe, having 3 main regional hubs in the US, in the UK, and in Hong Kong. We work in 193 countries with over 84,000 clients. Things that we can help you with is, of course, purchasing and buying the BIM standards, help you with training capabilities, so training on BIM on those different standards and helping you also achieve our qualifications. But also, even if you're just starting your journey on your BIM journey, there are also introductory training that we can offer. We can offer a gap assessment to your organization so that you can identify any gaps in documentation required by the standard. And ultimately, we can support your organization with our suite of certification And we have certification for every BIM stakeholders covering design and construction, asset management, security, health and safety, BIM objects as well. So we also offer certification to the manufacturers. And ultimately, something that we are really proud that we've launched in 2021, BIM software, Kitemark, and that certification is specific for software vendors and software providers, so that they can demonstrate that their software helps and supports the ISO 19650 adoption. Next slide, please. And what we really care about within BSI, we normally tend to join our clients in order to celebrate their success. We have created loads of case studies and brochures that you can all download from our website, but we've also celebrated the success of the clients in events worldwide. You can see like the latest one there on the right during Digital Construction Week in London in 2021. So we do really care about being next to our clients, have a collaborative approach and celebrate with them. Now on to another poll, poll 5. Anne-Marie, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Amelia. Thank you. Now we have our final poll before we get into our About BSI. How can BSI help support you in your BIM journey? If we could open the poll. So how can BSI support you in your BIM journey? So here we have multiple choice, multiple answers. Can we help you through standards? We talked about standards today. We talked a little bit about training. I'll talk about that in a bit. Through certification or Kitemark, or maybe through materials, brochures, industry white papers, case studies, reports. We've got a lot of industry insight and trends to share with you. So let's everybody vote and let us know how BSI can support you in your BIM journey. Multiple choice, multiple answers. And we'll just give everybody a few more seconds to vote, and then we'll close the poll and get going. So I'll let everybody finish voting. So I'll give you 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, let's close the poll and see how did we do. So 52% need support with standards, 65% with training, 50% certification Kitemark, and 68% would like to see some of the brochures, white papers, etc. Thank you, everybody. That's great information. Let's close that poll now and get on to our next slide. A little bit about BSI. Our purpose is inspiring trust for a more resilient world. We help shape and guide innovation through improving and standardizing business processes, products, and services to enable advancement. Amelia talked about our global footprint. We have a strong global footprint, 84,000 clients, 193 countries, and our clients range from globally recognized brands to small local businesses. A little bit of information about our solutions. We've got standards. We have our training classes, virtual and face-to-face, with classes of a variety of ISO standards, including ISO 9001, as well as BIM classes, specifically for the built environment sector. We have a wide range of options for BIM training, including fundamentals, project delivery, handover information exchange, as well as professionals program. You can become a BIM practitioner or a professional with our BIM qualifications program. We also offer certification to ISO 19650 BIM verification and Kitemark. Of course, we also have consulting services. If you are interested in any of our BSI solutions, please indicate this on the post-event survey, which will pop up as soon as the webinar is finished. Here are today's giveaways. We have our very popular little book of BIM with BIM acronyms explained in detail. I know you'll need that, plus other information, the BSI Perspectives Case Studies report, and our BIM training brochure. In order to get our giveaways today, please complete the post-event survey to be able to receive all of today's handouts. Just realized my camera wasn't on. Coming up, Digital delivery, better outcomes through improved collaboration. Join us and Mott MacDonald, one of our clients, on February 14th, where we will be discussing digital delivery and the appropriate application of technology and process and its effects on a collaborative leadership and structured ways of working. That's on our website, which will be on the slide. It's on the next slide, and you can find that under events and webinars. So that's our webinar for Valentine's Day, February 14th. BSI will be at New York Build coming up March 2nd and 3rd. We will be sponsoring a booth as well as hosting an industry panel on smart buildings. So those of you in the US attending New York Build, be sure to visit us at the show. Now I think we have Q&A. So we have a couple of questions. I think we have just a couple of minutes to do some questions here. So Amelia and Gary, first question that has come in is, how do we transition from the way an office wants to do BIM to doing BIM the right way? Amelia or Gary, Amelia, would you like to take that one? Okay, Gary?
We lost Amelia. Hi there. That's right. Yes, I mean, so this I think just boils down to you know, we're a international certification body. So I personally worked with organisations in the UK, within Europe, the Far East, Australia, the US, and one of the challenges we see is the spectrum of interpretation of BIM. And the understanding of what the specific requirements are. And this is where, of course, the ISO standards, which are being developed by international consensus, can really help. So yeah, my view would always be that if you follow the standards, the ISO standards, they're written in a very flexible way. Of course, there are some detailed requirements, but it's written in a way that it really promotes flexibility of adoption. So yeah, my view would always be follow the standards. In this way, globally, there's a common way in which we can start delivering projects and managing assets.
I think we have time for one more question, Gary. I think Amelia may have had bandwidth issues.
I'm
what
here.
is the, oh, you're
I'm
there.
back.
Okay. Okay. So what is the timeline for ISO 19650 certification? So how long would it take from beginning to end? And I know not every project is different, but what would be an average?
Well, it really depends on how the company is ready, how and where are they with their BIM journey. Now, what we offer within our certification program, let's say, is a stage 1 audit, which is just going to be one day to have a look at the procedures that are in place and highlights any gaps and make recommendation to look at some specific areas that might lack of information. And then there's the specific assessment in order to gain the certification that is going to be longer depending on how big the company is. Now, typically, it would be between 4 to 9 months, but it doesn't mean it can't be done in 3 months. Let's say we can assess the company in a month's time and we see that everything is smooth and the company is ready for the certification. It can be that we can organize an audit straight away and issue the certificate. Let's say typically between 4 and 9, but it could be less and it could be more.
Thank you, Amelia. I think we've come to the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar, and thank you to our speakers, Amelia and Gary. All participants today will receive a link to the recording of this webinar, as well as links to our featured handouts, the Little Book of BIM, BIM Perspectives, case studies, and our training brochure. However, in order to get this great material, you must complete the post-event survey, which will pop up as soon as the webinar is finished. If you have any questions regarding BIM verification, kite mark training, or certification or standards, please indicate this in the survey and we will get back to you right away. Once again, thank you all for attending. It's been a great group and have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.